Welcome to an episode of The Diplomats where I'm here with Karthik Konath and Liam Stokes. The three of us were in, the crapshoot, the S show that was the East on the top board of VDL. We played all year only to get, as Brandon Fogel say, into a den of lies and recriminations that seemed to never end. In fact, it didn't even end when the game ended. But thanks, guys, for joining us. Before I say anything else, I should say we're sponsored by diplomacybriefing.com. So we thank them for sponsoring the YouTube cast, video cast, podcast, whatever you want to call it. So Karthik, Liam, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Happy to be here.
The whole point of this thing that I do here is to improve my own play, but I think all three of us can agree we all could have improved in this game.
Yep.
Agreed.
And so we can take this experience on another notch on the belt of a missed top board for me. Liam, I know it was your second. And Karthik, at least in virtual face-to-face, it was your first.
Correct, yeah.
So I know you said this a little bit on your interviews with VDL, but we have a slightly different audience. Mostly Nexus people watch this, but Karthik, why don't you tell us a little bit first about your diplomacy background and how you got into virtual face-to-face?
Sure. So I've been playing diplomacy for just over 10 years now, I want to say. I think I started back when I was 14. I was in high school. Some high school friends invited me to a game online. We played on PlayDip at the time. I really liked the game that we were playing. But I think the phases were like 2 days long or something like that. So I got like bored really quickly and I wanted to play more diplomacy. And PlayDip wouldn't let me join more than like I think 3 at a time. So I ended up looking to like find another site where I could play, and I found WebDip, which has since been my primary place of play. I play a lot there. I think that's I think where I honed my tactical abilities the most. Played a lot of gunboat there, played a lot of full press there. Enjoyed my success there. I think at one point I was like the 30th best player on WebDip according to Ghost ratings. And then I guess earlier this year, once like COVID started hitting, I was bored and was like, now that with the basically I heard about the VDL on the WebDip forums, and I was like, okay, cool, I can join the face-to-face community without having to actually pay for a plane ticket and a hotel. So this is a really low barrier of entry to go to try it, see if I like it, see if I prefer online play, see if I prefer this, see if I like them both. And it turned out I really enjoyed the community, the face-to-face, the face-to-face offered, and I got really into it, and I've been playing for almost half a year now, I think.
How do you view your style? I mean, is it, do you like to play a certain style? I mean, everyone accuses me of being an alliance player, but I mean, do you have a way you like to play?
Sure. I actually do like to generally play alliance type play, at least through most of the early and mid game. So long as it can maintain an ally, I generally like to. I generally like to avoid lying as much as possible, because I think lying is generally a crutch. I think if you are playing a good game of diplomacy, you can generally go a long way without lying, and it generally sets you up well for the end game, where you'll try to avoid pissing off too many other players, or at least piss them off less than everyone else did. That being said, I'm not gonna roll over either. There's definitely times if I see hey, if I end the alliance, there's a chance to get a solo. I'll go for the solo, because I do think it's important to play to win the game. Winning has different definitions according to everyone, but I think one general definition everyone agrees it's in the rules of the game is that if you got a solo, you won the game. End of discussion. So if I see a chance to go for a solo, I'll go for it. But otherwise, I generally like to play alliance play.
Okay, Liam, tell us how you got into diplomacy.
I started playing roughly just over a year ago. Just a friend suggested the game. We were doing a boys' trip out kind of road trip camping type of thing. So we brought the board along and played a couple rounds. It was a lot of fun over the weekend. And after that, just started to look for other ways to play it and found Backstabber, and started playing. And then eventually, I can't remember where I found it, but I found a post about DixieCon and saw that it was virtual this year, or back in 2020, and figured it would be a fun event. And then, the rest is history.
Yeah, you got to spend time with Umble at DixieCon. How fun!
Oh, yeah, Russ and myself had a few good run-ins. So some good relationships there.
Okay, so how would you describe your diplomacy style? Because you get a little bit of a bad rap because I think you play multi-style. I mean, you have multi ways.
I think you give me a bad rap, Ed. But I mean, I generally try to I'm somebody who likes to be liked, who tries to be liked. And I definitely, you're probably right. There's some games where I go and I play completely different than what I've done in a game before, and whether that's strategy or whether I'm still just trying to figure out what kind of player I want to be, I don't know where I land on that spectrum there.
Well, Umble tells me all is forgiven since you're now a Patreon of the briefing.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, no, I figured that's the my 2 cents is what he deserved there.
Okay. So the Paris method. Well, Liam, I think it was pretty easy to assume you were going to get Turkey, maybe Italy, but Turkey is probably who you thought you would get.
Turkey was who I thought I was going to get and who I dreaded I was going to get. Just from the past play from the past year, especially in the last couple of months, it seemed like most people had quietly decided that it's just easier to get Turkey out of the corner and then move west. Clearly, there's a few exceptions to that rule. Obviously, the virtual World Diplomacy Championship, or the Winter Classic, or whatever Bill's giant long name was it for. Morgante won as Turkey on that one, and he was a 7th seed. He got stuck with it and did very well with it. So there certainly are exceptions to the rule, but I haven't been able to find that exception.
So Karthik, we essentially swapped positions because even though you were picking third, you placed third overall in the league thanks to an incredibly strong final day.
Mm-hmm.
You dropped below me, which ended up dropping 2 for 5th. Of course, you didn't know what would happen with 1 and 2 when you did that. You didn't know what powers would go, but you must have had a strategy. Tell me what it was.
Sure. I figured that I wanted. I figured like that John would or Tanya would be in the West, and I was and I basically wanted the chance to either take Austria, because I love to play Austria a lot. Austria is one of my favorite powers to play, and if both of them ended up there, because I figured both of them would want to be in the West, since the West is probably the strongest place to be right now, because the West just tends to resolve faster than the East does for a variety of reasons. So I figured if I could avoid them, be in the East and sort of control my own destiny there, where I think it would be easier to sort of assert my will, and get sort of the position that I wanted down there, then I'd be in a good position to get one of them on my side and then go from there. I mean, it turned out that Tanya and Dave killed John when I thought there'd probably be a John Tanya alliance in the West, but so I was wrong there. But everything else sort of worked how I thought it was going to, until I made a couple of tactical mistakes towards the end.
Okay. Hey, welcome, Dave. We're just talking about the game here, and feel free to chip in whenever you want, Dave. You pick France, and I'll keep going. So I picked third, and it was an interesting, and I didn't expect to be picking third. I suspected John would pick England. I've seen him play England so many times, and I thought, okay, that's a great spot for him to be. And I know Tanya likes to play Germany.
Mm-hmm.
I seriously thought about picking France. I didn't pick it because of the other reasons said on this stream, right? Like I wasn't worried about an EG meta so much because I know Tanya hasn't really played recently, so I don't think she thinks about the meta in terms of recent times. But really, if I assume everyone's watched a DBN stream to some extent.
Yep.
We're all egotistical.
Yep.
I fast forward your part, Zed.
My goal going into this game really was to rally the Davids versus the Goliaths, and I really thought the four of us here are, the figurative Davids. And so I realized if I was in the West, I was just going to either empower John or Tanya or be odd person out. And I was also concerned Morgante would pick Italy because I know he likes Italy, and I thought I might face a gang up of three, right off the bat. So I didn't do that. And I thought, well, what is the best country for me? And it was really down between Russia and Austria on who to pick. And I thought Russia could give me a little influence, in the north. And I thought I could work with both of you. And my secondary goal, other than David and Goliath, which is totally true, is I wanted to help Liam as much as I could because I know he's not qualified for DBNI, and I wanted to work with Karthik as much as I could. And so I really had this idea that the three of us would be in the East somehow, and that we could maybe make something happen that would inure to the benefit of all three of us, and particularly Liam. And Dave, you were sort of the beneficiary of this because nobody picked France, and there you were between France and Turkey. Dave, if you're talking, it sounds like your speed is about like 1/10 normal speed. All right, well, he's messing with that. So, Dave, you want to try again?
Yeah, just let me know. Does that work?
We
now?
got
that
it
works.
now.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, and I'll probably have to bug out at some point. It's my wife's birthday. And my
Whatever
mom's
you want.
bringing her dinner. But I want to talk about that because I there's a lot of reasons I should have won, but based on what you just said, I should have won if I would have got you guys on my side early.
Mhm.
Because what I should have done once I was France and once Tanya was taking me to the mid game with a chance to win is I should have been talking to Ed and Karthik the whole time. Liam, you too, but like Ed and Karthik were the ones that kind of had the power over there.
Mhm.
So if I would have, mid game been like, okay, Tanya got me here, I have a chance, and now Ed and Karthik take me the rest of the way. Now, obviously, you guys were going to try to win too if you had a chance, but and I just didn't. But that's my lack of experience. I have to the 15 minutes is fast for me. So I never took advantage of the relationships I built with Karthik, Ed, and Liam throughout the year.
Mhm.
And then here I am with a chance to win, and I don't know how. So,
I think my biggest challenge on the top board, apart from just tactics and diplomacy and all the things that matter, are time is faster on a top board. I knew that from Carnage playing Austria, but playing Russia, where I'm talking to everybody, I did not have time to develop any relationship with you, Dave, until like 1905, 1906. The East was just such a crap. And then Tanya says she moves on me because I wouldn't talk to her. It's like, I'm trying to survive in the South, and I didn't have time to worry about the North. I think time management for anyone who's on top board is critical. I don't know if any of you felt the same way.
Oh, I definitely felt the same. Like, I was in Austria, and I think I talked to Tanya maybe 2 times or 3 times between 1901 and 1906. Like, I tried to get her a couple times in 1901, but she was busy. And then after that, from 1902 to 1905 or 1904, I was just in a major pickle. Siobhan and Kevin and basically the entire commentary stream, thought I was basically left for dead, because I was in Austria stuck on 4 for like 3 or 4 straight years. So I was basically spending all 15 minutes talking to people in the East, trying to spend every single possible moment I could to make something magical work out, and eventually it did happen. But unfortunately, it did mean that I had no chance to talk to either you, Dave, or Tanya, and try to make the necessary relationships. I think that would have helped me potentially either get you or Tanya on side in the mid game.
Yeah, and yeah, that was my fault as much because Karthik, I don't know if I sent you a message yesterday or something, but there were a bunch of messages you sent me that I never read until the day after. Like,
Yeah, I got that. Yeah.
and
I basically was like, I'm out of time. Like, I need to send
Yeah.
text messages to people because otherwise I have no hope of reaching out to them. So I just sent a bunch of Discord.
No, yeah, and it was good. It was right, and I said it. I don't know if in the moment that I could have made those decisions. I've already made it very clear that that was a real challenge for me. But seeing it in the on text on Discord, and just kind of darn. But again, I had some missed opportunities, and if I'm going forward, some of it is just my skill set. My skill set right now is not. I don't have the ability. Like Ed, Karthik, and Liam, you guys are awesome people. Like, that's what I feel about you guys, right? But in the game, I was not able to keep that relationship because my head was spinning in too many different places. And that kept me from really being, having a legit. I had a legit shot to win. The reason I didn't is because I could not take advantage of that skill set that I
mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, you were dealing with Tanya in Germany, who had been your alliance partner for the entire game, right? And she's an incredible player, and to try and overcome that without having the relationship early, I can totally understand why you would want to be team I stay on Tanya's side because you trust her based off of the moves that have happened so far in the game. So I mean, if we couldn't link up earlier in the game, then I see what you did as mostly reasonable. I can totally see why you come to those conclusions.
But when Karthik and Ed, when you two were in with me and just me, and Ed, you were saying make sure you get Eddie, and I think Karthik, you were talking about Belgium. I didn't want to one dot Tanya, but the reality is, I think you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I think if I would have shown the initiative to do that, you would have then said, hey, you know what, he deserves to win. Like in a game of Survivor, in a last episode of Survivor, sometimes even though everybody hates the guy, they're like, but he played the game right. I feel like you would have, maybe that would have been the thing, and I never took that initiative. I was still waiting. I was just waiting for longer. And then the game was over.
I definitely agree with that. I think if I couldn't have won, but you had gone for Belgium or gone for Munich and gotten Eddie, I would definitely have been streaming all my units across the line into Munich and Berlin and trying to get a control of them. But if in 1910, I'm hey, I got no shot of winning here. I'm behind. It's choice between Tanya and Dave. I could totally see myself being hey, Dave played smart. Dave, I had a good relation with Dave in the game, and he played aggressively. I'm going to reward that.
In my mind, I mean, by not putting any pressure on Tanya, you kept all her units where I live, and I had no chance to do anything with that happening. I don't think I could have won either way, but I think you would have made it a more interesting two-way race between you and Karthik, and then because I think Tanya's position was very spread out, and there were opportunities. I'm not saying you would have won it. I'm not saying you would have obtained a different result, but I think that was your best reasonable chance to get a different result. Is probably the way I would put it, because ultimately I'm not sure. When Karthik was in a strong position, he may have been able. What are you going to be able to do? You can't really move your fleets out of Italy. When we get on the board and talk about that. Okay, so I just want to sort of go back to the pregame negotiations, at least in the East here, which is this is when I look back upon this game, I had my plan of the Davids versus the Goliaths right away, Karthik, the first thing is you asked to go talk to Morgante. So that
Mhm.
put me in the room with Liam. We start working on an RT, which, because I said I wanted to help Liam and I meant it, at least at that point. And uh, and it was, we were coordinating from the get-go. Although I don't know, in retrospect, Liam, this Bulgaria Romania thing would
I
have been
think
the way to go, even with my missed order, which it was. We probably should have done something different.
potentially. I think my kind of thought process behind those moves, um, mainly was and mainly was there's obviously the Sevastopol Constantinople swap that people can do by the end of 01, but that can be sniffed out pretty quickly and stopped very quickly. Whereas this, it's a little bit slower, but it's more of a guaranteed swap with the intention that you have a unit with me and I have a unit with you effectively, so that it kind of keeps both of us honest as we're marching forward in the various theaters. We each have a unit to kind of help control the other person's growth, and we each have a unit to kind of have our own say in theaters where we might not normally be involved in. Was kind of my thought process behind those.
If I had to do it over again, greed got the better of me because I had worked with Tanya before very successfully for both of us, and I knew she was giving me Sweden. If we were going to do an RT here, I probably should have just said, take Romania and I'll blow the fleet.
And that was one of the other options is after even after the initial swap, you get your 2 builds in year 1, but once you're in Bulgaria, at that point we blow it.
That's what I thought was going to happen when Romania slid down to Bulgaria. I assumed that it was
Yeah.
just going to get piffed, and I was like, oh damn, you guys have a brilliant plan here,
Yeah, and if that's the goal from the outset, that definitely seems like a pretty useful way to go, because you get your second build, you can build 2 extra armies, or you can even build a fleet up in the north if that's your game, while still having a reinforced and protected backline. So it's not it definitely seems like a strategy that could use some refinement.
Yeah.
It certainly requires a lot of trust on the part of both players, because it's not something you'd want to do with a total stranger, that's for sure.
Definitely.
But
so what I was going to say was, I agree with you 100% on the telegraphing point. When I saw this move, I was actually taken very much by surprise when I saw Seb go to Rum and war to Ukraine. I mean, I was happy as hell. I thought oh man, that is just being a next level ally, next level friend, and I was super happy about it. And I didn't even have a hint of suspicion until Morgante told me that Liam expected that move. So I think maybe if there was some more diplomatic cover and you pretended or feigned surprise with Morgante, that it may have worked out better. Because it was only when Morgante told me that Liam you expected it, that I was like, wait a something may be afoot here. Which is when I pressed Ed super hard for support of Serbia to Bulgaria, because that forces him to commit one way or another. And I basically at that point would have proof of who he's working with, and he would have to make that commitment.
Yeah, it's definitely a put up or shut up type of request, because if he's on your side, why wouldn't he put you in there, right?
Exactly.
There's no reason for him not to.
Right. And then when he agreed, I was like, okay, cool. Morgante is just clearly wrong here, or Liam is bullshit.
Or he's trying to sow discord somewhere.
Yeah, he's trying to sow discord. He sees a strong RA. He's trying to mess with it, whatever. But I don't
know if I agreed. I actually think I lawyered out of that, but I made it look like I was agreeing. But it was clear in a second. But the other thing is the goals. Karthik, you said in your pregame interview you wanted to do an AR. So what you told me was the truth right away. Yeah. You wanted to do an air alliance. I believed you when you said that. I didn't mind moving, not moving to Galicia right away, because I thought it would add to the deception a bit. But you can tell, Liam, I pushed really hard for a rat alliance with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that certainly was something that was on the table, at least from your point of view, right from the get go.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, Karthik and I, we had, funnily enough, I don't think we didn't talk enough.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I think that we both of us in the back of our minds had I'll work with Ed. I really think we probably both had that thought.
Yep.
And we both had the Ed Sullivan factor was in the calculations for both of us.
Oh, 100%.
And I think that, funnily enough, if we had both taken it out, we would have had a bit of a different result. But it's one of those things where you come in with preconceived notions about who you've worked with in the past, who you can work with, and it kind of just goes to show that yes, while something like this league, it's all the whole tournament really is one big game, but you still have to treat each individual game with its own uniqueness, and it's kind of its own, even if it's a top board, you have to go into it with an open mind to work with people who you wouldn't have expected to, and kind of go from there. I know Dave had a few moments of, damn, I wouldn't have thought I'd be doing that by the end of the board, right? Like being in France as the second to last pick, like there was a lot of moments that you probably weren't prepared for.
Oh, I spent the whole month preparing to be Italy. And I spent that month trying to figure out, just some openers and maybe getting, could I get England and Germany to go hard at France? And as a little bit of something I had. I mean, it happens, people do it. And when I say that, like, Jackson and I talked about it a few times, because he's like, well, you're going to do all this and not get Italy. And I'm like, well, that's fine, because then I get Russia. And I'm ready for a wintergreen. I get Austria. But I was really trying to study Italy because I felt like that's where I might fall. Obviously, that was incorrect. And then basically what that research did was told me how to kill France. And so there I am in France. So, but yeah, Liam, the other part too is, I guess I have a lot of respect for everybody on the board, but I did not want to ally with Tanya or John going before we picked our powers. That was not where I thought my best, where I could be, because I just knew they'd outplay me at some point throughout. The reality is, though, and this is not the first time I've said this, but all 6 players would have outplayed me at some point, so it probably wasn't as big of a deal. And Tanya was actually, it's the first time I've ever been on a board with her. She was great. She was great to work with. She carried me through some things. I tried to be non-confrontational, even on a few things that I thought that I should get, but didn't. And then, well, we've already said it, but then when it was time, when I was in position and it was time, I didn't do it. So I actually feel okay about everything until that one time.
Well, Karthik, I mean, I was going to move north because I've seen John play so many times, and I know how much he likes to play in the north as England. But I also thought stubbornly that I might get you to turn around on the rat thing, but it was clear you were not going to, because you came in with your own game plan. Could anything have swayed your mind?
I generally don't like the idea of doing a rat unless I'm basically forced into it. I generally view being as part of a rat as Austria the same way I view being Germany as part of a Western Triple, is that you're just joining an RT and just delaying how long it takes for them to kill you, and just like, basically feeding yourself to them. And like in a Western Triple, I feel like, similarly, like, if you're a German trying to join up for a Western Triple, you're really just like, feeding yourself to England and France in most cases. So I don't know if there's a world in which I agree to an RIT in 1901. If I saw a Western Triple in 1901, 1902, and I was like, even in 1902, I'd be pretty confident the Western Triple would eventually break up. But if it was getting to a point where it's like, oh man, we're in trouble, and Turkey was making good progress on Italy, then only then would I probably be willing to agree to an RIT.
All right.
Makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of what ifs that we could play in terms of, I know the big thing for Germany that everybody says is they need to get Belgium is the big thing for the Western Shrivel to work. And I wonder if there's some form of 3 dots to give Austria, to give them some comfort, whether that involves Sev going to Romania and then getting blown up with an Austrian unit following into it, Serbia and Greece at the same time. Something to that effect to assuage, kind of reassure you that, okay, you've got your defenses. The agreement is you might lose one of these dots at some point just to help the alliance, and however that goes. But it'd certainly be interesting if that's the comparison that's being drawn to see if there is a viable position for Austria to get into.
Yeah, I think the analog then would be Austria getting Romania in that case, but like I think I mentioned this in the post game actually. Like I was telling Ad, is like in order for me to agree to an RIT, I think the price would have been so high that it would be unreasonable for you guys to accept. I mean, if Ed was willing to accept me getting Romania, I probably would have agreed at that point. But I'm not sure how easy that would have been to sell to you or to Ed in terms of getting that to happen.
Well, I mean, Ed said earlier you were almost 100% confident you were getting Sweden, correct?
Yeah, I knew I was getting Sweden. I probably would have done it.
And so realistically, you get one build from Sweden, and you'd get a rebuild from the fleet. I'd get my one build that I normally would get as Turkey anyways.
We never, the 3 of us, got in a room.
No, we never did. And so I think that was a big mistake in terms of, if that was on the table, we should have at least addressed it directly, as opposed to having conversations through people and
and you could have prevented Morgante here from Trieste. You told me he was going in, but on DBN, Brandon said it was not agreed. What is the real truth?
So it was sort of weird. Like, it's like initially I said no, like, I didn't want him to enter Trieste. And then towards the end of the turn, after I talked to you, and I had a very strong feeling that you were going to give me Bulgaria. Then I was like, okay, he can get Trieste. I'll get Bulgaria, Serbia, and Greece. I'll go up to, I'll be in Vienna. I'll be able to build in Vienna and Budapest, and I can evict Morgante whenever I want to from Trieste, so it's no big deal. When I didn't get Bulgaria and I saw the switcheroo, I immediately regretted that decision to let him take Trieste, but yeah.
Well, if it means anything, I really tried to work with Morgante at that point too, and he didn't want to do it.
Yeah,
I tried a similar tact, and it was clearly fruitless.
Now, Dave, I do want to talk to you about Belgium, because I know how much John prioritizes Belgium as England, and how tough was that negotiation?
So John asked me to support him into Belgium. He wasn't sure what Germany was going to do. I actually was pretty happy that Morgante went to Tyrolia, because I didn't want the 3rd build, because the target. I didn't want Tanya to get Belgium, so I didn't want to have to support her in. So then when she was going to go to Munich, that was less stressful for me. But now John wants in, and here's the deal. I said yes, knowing that I wasn't going to, because I had to pick a target, and I picked him. Some people I know believe that, hey, give him Belgium. If I would have given him Belgium and then gone South Coast like I did, then he might build Eddie or something else, right? So that might have been okay, but I just felt like, yeah, he asked me to support Yorkshire in. I said yes, and then didn't, or that type of thing, and knew that I was heading that way. So it wasn't really negotiation. He asked me, I said yes, and I didn't do it, which I did that this game more than I've ever done.
Okay.
So your move to the South Coast, then, was that keeping your options open, or?
I actually think it was a mistake. So the theme of me talking about this is just how, I do okay and I do some good things, but sometimes without, I run out of time and I don't think I'm not able to get all of it consistent. So, I go to South Coast and then John might think that he's good, but then I'm going to bounce him in Belgium. So what was the point of that, right? All it did was get Morgante to wonder if I'm coming at him. He might have been building 2 fleets anyway, but now he does for sure. So it was not a good move by me. It ended up working out because it didn't, John built his fleet London. Morgante built his 2 fleets. I grabbed Morgante quick and I said, hey, I was trying to do a deke. I didn't mention Belgium at all. And so I am not coming your way. And he moved, he didn't come at me. He did get into TYS, but so I guess what I'll say is I was able to recover from that one, but no, it was not some like master plan. It was just not well thought out.
Oh, so I actually thought that me asking you to go to Spain South Coast had something to do with it, but clearly it was completely separate considerations that caused you to move there. Because in 1901, I remember begging you to go to Spain South Coast because I was like, oh man, I don't like the fact that I'm basically giving Morgante Trieste, even though it'd be kind of unreasonable for me to know if I'm getting Bulgaria. So I kind of wanted you to be there just so to ensure that he built both fleets there, and then also I don't see any shenanigans with any of his fleets. But
right, it just, for me, the issue is it wasn't consistent. I don't need to go South Coast to Spain and bounce Belgium and not give John Belgium. That's my feeling, and so I do remember you saying that. To me it just looks like one of those things where it's like, do both or none.
yeah, very fair.
All right, so here's where my game, at least, I think the builds, I should have built north with Moscow. That was a big mistake.
What
I
was
knew
this?
I knew I had angered you, but the only deal Tanya asked for to let me into Sweden is I wouldn't build in Warsaw.
Okay, I was going to ask why build in Sev as opposed to Warsaw.
It was kind of funny. It was like, she goes, the only thing I'm asking is you don't build in Warsaw. And I go, okay, well, what about St. Petersburg? She goes, build what you want in St. Petersburg. I'm like, so I can build a fleet South Coast in St. Petersburg? Like, yeah, that'd be stupid, but you can do it. And I don't even know if it was stupid, but the fact that she just said it so nonchalantly led me to think that, like, okay, well, I'm not going to do it. And at this point, she's telling me she wants to ally with Dave against England, right? And so I'm of the view that I want to keep John fighting a little longer than him going away, but I also want to advance my position a bit. So that's why I didn't build St. Petersburg, to give John a little comfort up there. And I built Sev just in case there was any hijinks by Liam, that, which I didn't think there would be, but I thought that at least would show that there might be some distrust.
It certainly did. As combined with the spring moves, it definitely had it left a sour taste in my mouth.
Well, this is where I think I lose the game, because I intended to move to Khan and it did not.
I actually think it was better for you guys that it didn't work, because I think I would have been very, very comfortable and very safe if this move failed. I'm sorry, if this move succeeded, right? Because you'd have a Turkish fleet on Bulgaria East Coast, and an army in Romania and an army in Galicia. I mean, I could defend against those 3 units for forever and a day, right? Like, you guys would eventually be able to force like the Aegean, potentially, but I mean, given all the other advantages I have, I feel pretty confident that I could probably get I wouldn't lose my possessions for a while at the very least. I think the fact that Bulgaria was able to come down to Constantinople and then Ankara was able to be convoyed in made it a lot better. No, I think honestly the better move instead would just have been to convoy Constantinople to Bulgaria and send Bulgaria to Constantinople in spring 1902. And I think that would have given you all the benefits of having that strong position without the dangerous losses of having the Black Sea in East Coast. And then you could support support Constantinople, the Russian thing Constantinople,
Yeah.
to Aegean, and then send the Black Sea down to Constantinople, and then just go from there.
So that was my initial idea.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that put a damper in it was Ed insisting that Romania support Galicia to Budapest.
Mm-hmm.
I had initially
I
proposed
think we went back and forth on that.
Yeah, because I kept pushing the other alternative.
Where it's sort of like in 1905 when Morgante insisted hey, I'm getting Greece, and then I was like, no, you're not. And then
it was pretty much I wanted to use the Romanian support to support Khan into Bulgaria. Yeah. So that way it was more not technically guaranteed, but it was a safer bet.
Yeah.
Because there was no way that Budapest was tapping Romania, so I figured that if you tap ball at suspecting some funniness, that it would still go through. But Ed was insistent on on that, and I figured, well, if he's going along with my crazy plan, I'll give him one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see
all you need to do is explain to me why better. I mean, there were two misorders
and,
on this,
and that a lot of that could be on my part with a plan that I had in my head. I definitely I know I didn't explain it as well as I could have, in terms of the reasoning behind it and some of the methods to the madness.
So I definitely wouldn't have made the Budapest to Rum, Greece support Serbia to Bulgaria move there, because I was just assuming it would be supported in with 3, right? I assumed that Sebastopol was going to support whole Romania, and then Black Sea and Romania were going to support Constantinople to Bulgaria, because I assumed that the move there was that it was going to get piffed.
You thought it was going to be blown up rather than the swap.
So that's why I made the moves that I did, because I figured that would be the natural counter to it.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
and that move honestly might have been better, even rather than swapping positions, is just blow up the fleet and be done with it.
Yeah.
But that's it's definitely hindsight in that regard.
But I will say, I'm always happy to see sort of innovation, see people trying new things.
Yeah, trying new things, especially if Ed and I up until this. There's the handful of bumps in the road, but we've been mostly solid for most of our games. And I figured if I was going to try with anybody, it'd be with Ed.
Well, both Karthik and Liam know this, which is I am a good ally, but I am prone to misorders, and it's not intentional.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll make the occasional mistake. And there were 2 here on this board. This wasn't. I honestly meant to move Moscow to St. Petersburg.
And that's what I was going to ask next, is you knew Norway was going to, if you succeeded, you knew Norway would retreat. So...
Yeah, no, I meant to do that, both of those, and it just didn't go through. And I don't know why I had entered Warsaw. It may have been because I thought John would actually make it to Skag, because I just assumed I just assumed Denmark was going to support Kiel to Helgoland, based on my conversations with Tanya. But I wanted it to go to St. Petersburg just in case, and then. This is essentially disaster for me. So,
Well, I think the St. Pete would have been the better move, even if not just because of the retreat, obviously, but
then also, who wants to mess with the North with me up there?
But also, you've now got 3 on Norway. So if your attack didn't succeed and you made it into St. Pete, you have 3 on Norway, and John would only have 2. So you'd be able to guarantee it in the fall anyways, without having to worry about.
But at this point, Karthik, you do get Morgante completely on your side.
Yes.
You do for not a very long time.
Yes.
There's a moment, I don't know if it's not this fall, I think it's next in 03 at some point, we'll see, where everything went, I don't know what words were said or what actions happened, but that alliance, unbeknownst to me, I was under the impression that it was more of a ruse just to make me stop turtling and come out of my shell a bit. But it was real. Do you want to talk about what what kind of happened? You guys seemed decently solid for a while.
I think we were definitely like, forced together by board realities, but I don't think at any time we truly trusted each other. I'm not sure like what Morgante felt about me, at this point in time, but based off of the mood, what he was telling me in press, I always felt that he was only giving me like a quarter of the picture, like not even half the picture. He's only giving me like a quarter of the picture, and like some of like the things that he was saying, like didn't square with anything that made sense to me. So like some of them did end up being true, but like a lot of them didn't, and I was just like, well, either he's getting bad intel, which is entirely possible and would not be his fault, or like he's misleading me, in which case I need to play a little bit careful. If you go to the next move, if you go to Fall 1902, you'll see that I bounce bounce myself in Greece. And the reason for this is because during our conversations in this this turn, I offer him support into Eastern, right? And then at some point during the conversation, he basically tells me that I should try and force Bulgaria, and that he feels like he doesn't need support into Eastern. And he says basically he doesn't think you're gonna go for it, and he doesn't think my support will do anything there, or will be useful there. And I'm like, if my support's not going to be useful there, that definitely means that Smyrna is going to Aegean. So I'm not sure why he's going to be asking me to go support Serbia into Bulgaria if he knows.
Because Smyrna's only going to Aegean or East, so...
Yeah, exactly. So if he's not bouncing out of East, then it's only going to go to the Aegean. So I'm like, okay, well then you're asking me to make a move that is guaranteed to fail. That's a little bit suspicious.
Exactly.
So I'm like, and if you don't want support, what if Liam's just lying to you? Why wouldn't you want support then anyways? Then I was like, are the hijinks I'm worried about actually going to happen? Like, is Ionian going to convoy Tunis to Greece? Is he going to just send Ionian to Greece and Naples to Ionian?
It would have been pretty devastating to have, honestly, even if it wasn't Greece, even if he convoyed Tunis to Albania, if that was his whole, if that was the plan, that would have been pretty hard to come back from.
Yeah, that would have been.
If that was the plan, right?
If Morgante is going to do something here, if he convoys to Albania, there's nothing I really could have done there. I'm not going to send Serbia back.
You could have put yourself out of position to defend against it. But I
would put myself immediately out of position, whereas this, at least defends that, and then getting the opportunity to throw to either Ed or you to spike.
If he does screw you over,
if he does screw me over, right? But Morgante was very, very upset with me for this move. Even after I thought I had to assuage his concerns later. But I think this is one of the moments that causes him to very much distrust me.
Which seems a little funny in the sense that it wouldn't have done anything.
Exactly.
No matter what you.
It all ended up the same.
Yeah, well, the same. And
the only thing
not to support him into Eastern. So I'm at that point, I'm not sure what the issue is. But.
The only thing that could have worked or that would have done something is if Aegean was the mover to ball.
Yeah, exactly. But there's no way I'm ever going to send Aegean to.
And especially if you're working with him, it would be ridiculous to leave Aegean.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially expecting Smyrna to go there.
Yeah, exactly.
So realistically, those two units, Serbia was better off doing something with Rum. In terms of a realistic proposal from Italy, it was well, why don't you take a shot at Romania? Maybe they're attacking you, with something else.
Hey, let's get Dave in here. Dave, I want to know how Belgium went. You took Belgium, and here Tanya is supporting. On the DBN stream, they said this was totally agreed. But yet you are moving to Burgundy, you're moving Spain to Gascony, and you were in the English Channel, so you're committed against John. Tell me in your head, did she just basically say, I'm taking it, you're like, okay, or how did it
I didn't put up a fight. I did tell her she had to force it. I think what are we at right now? She's going to go 6. I'm going to be 5. Right or wrong, I did come in with the idea of, hey, I'm going to be okay kind of being a little bit behind as a junior partner. I didn't see the potential for John to be building two while not gaining. You know what I mean? He lost two fleets that he got to build in I think Eddie in London. I didn't see that happening, so I felt like, hey, I'm fine. I'm gonna keep Tanya just real happy with me, and I'm gonna have two dots in England real soon. So again, I don't know if it was right or wrong or if I should have put up more of a fight, but to me, I thought, well, I got potential growth here. It is interesting because when you said earlier about how all of my decisions to keep things easy on Tanya to then also keep things easy on me made things tough on you. And again, that's the the speed of the game and the not having enough conversations with you, and I guess with all of the East, to maybe say, okay, that's great. You got a good alliance, but what happens mid game? Where do you win this thing and you need us, or where do you Russia or Austria or Turkey win this game?
Yeah.
Let me throw this open. I don't think any of you know this. Pretty sure you don't. I like John. I'm worried. I get scared of John because of how well he does, but he's a great guy, and I think he really is as humble as he appears.
Mm-hmm.
He came to me and said, "Look at my position." Right before this set of moves, this is a disaster. I'm I'm fighting for my life is basically what he told Brandon, who reported on DBN. He told me, let me keep St. Petersburg, move to Sweden, let me keep Norway, disband Finland. I will be able to stop this FG, and I will be back in the game, and I will help you, and I'll give you both of those territories back, which you hear a lot, but you never know.
Mm-hmm.
As I look back at this game, I actually thought John moved to St. Petersburg. I didn't have time to realize it was a retreat because I was so convinced he would get to Skagerrak no matter what.
Yeah.
That I just didn't see it. But I think maybe I should have made that deal with John, seeing what was developing with FG.
Well, it's not a bad situation, mainly because we could have gotten rid of kept your dot purple. We could have defended it, and in Bulgaria, and you could have just disbanded the fleet straight up with your one lost dot there.
Also, I wouldn't say necessarily that John would have been any better off had you done it though, because St. Petersburg was piffed, right? So he was able to get the two builds he would have gotten otherwise had he kept the unit in St. Petersburg. And he did keep Norway.
Right.
True. Yeah. He would have had potentially a better defense and built a better relationship with Ed. Your units in the north could have been invaluable to a counterattack.
Yeah. So I mean, at that point, it would take, but it also weakened Ed's position though in the north, and would require some time to pull out the Fleet North Coast to Norway, or to Barents and then to Norwegian, into a useful position.
Yeah,
that would have taken time. Whereas I think pipping and allowing him to rebuild it accomplished the task about just as well as keeping St. Petersburg would have done.
It's possible, but I think if Ed was on board, the set of moves I would envision would be letting him stay in St. Pete, letting him come into if you were truly on board and you're being honest, he might have taken you up, is you going to Skagerrak with your fleet and Finland going to Sweden to have a play on Denmark in the next year.
Well, part of his plan was that Finland was going to get disbanded.
Right. That is what he said.
Oh, is that what he said? Okay.
Yeah. So if you'd have a fleet in Sweden, and presumably at that point,
but I could have proposed that as a counter. I didn't.
So if that was the deal, it was, well, I'll do it, but I'm leaving my army up there.
Yeah.
That might have been an arrangement, and to me, it seems better tactically, but whether diplomatically it could have worked is a whole other story.
Yeah, but I think would be the logical continuation would be if Sweden supported Norway into Skagerrak and St. Petersburg followed into Norway. That would be I think the fastest way to get the fleet in North Coast somewhere useful.
Back useful.
And then suddenly you're in an attacking position on Denmark. You could presumably have gotten one of your built fleets into the North Sea and try to put up a half decent defense against Dave, or maybe try to get Dave back on side, England could have been his janitor or something like that. But even that, I think probably wouldn't have happened. I don't think Dave would have taken him up on the offer. And I think maybe most likely John just dies a slower death, but it also has a weaker North and a far more factitious relationship with Tanya, which I think would have been detrimental to his game.
Yeah.
But I mean, all this is hypothetical, obviously.
Okay. Let's see here. As it is spring 1903, Liam and I had prepared, obviously, for the Galicia move. That's why Ukraine slipped down to Romania.
So quickly going back to fall 02, my question was, why did Warsaw leave Moscow? Or why did Warsaw go to Moscow? What was the point?
After my relations with John broke down.
But you knew you were getting St. Pete. That was a guaranteed set of
I
orders.
I knew I was getting St. Pete. But part of me was trying to get Morgante a little more comfortable. But I don't know. I guess this is a bad idea.
Well, because I think if Warsaw stays, we keep Galicia, and have the position that we're about to get in the spring. You can go back to the spring. Now that was the move that I was more curious about, was what happened with that one, because
I should have probably coordinated that through better with you. I it's a timing issue.
Oh, absolutely, and that it kind of worked out. We had fine position. It would have been nice to keep him out of Galicia here, which would have been possible if it wasn't Warsaw. Just simply that we can push forward without having to worry about getting torn from the other side. But getting into Serbia here was nice. This was the year that, as far as Morgante was concerned, Karthik, your alliance was dead. Or your alliance was dead in terms of any hope of sticking together in the long term.
Really? Because this was the turn where I thought I'd finally patched things up with him.
See, about the last 30, 45 seconds of the turn, pulls me into a room and says, Smyrna should tap Syria. Smyrna needs to tap Syria. Smyrna needs to tap Syria.
Yeah, I did remember him that being mentioned.
And for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of doing the last minute stuff. It doesn't give me enough time to process the moves. Obviously here he was genuine, so can't fault him there. But for me, that's just, if it was at the beginning of the turn, hey, I'm doing this, do that, I might have been more inclined.
If that had happened, the whole game changes.
If I tap Syria, and the green fleets are stuck exactly where they are, and I've gotten into Serbia, which we just did, I think the game changes quite a bit here.
Yeah, I think so too.
Or honestly, if we were willing to put Khan into the Aegean here, realistically, if we do something like that, even, because actually that would have you would have had to choose between Serbia and actually Serbia.
No, I would have Serbia to Albania, and then
to Albania, yeah. Or honestly, Trieste would have been another gamble for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
What did you order? What did you order with Smyrna?
I told Morgante, I was like, you know what, because he did tell me at the beginning he was looking for a way for us to untangle and for him to go against Dave, which I don't know how Dave's conversations went. Clearly he tries to go against him here. And so he was looking for a way, and he obviously found it a bit late, but I said, well, if you want it, the support's there for East to Aegean. You can take it. You can go to Greece, with Ionian, and, Aegean's screwed at that point. But he just...
Yeah, that would have been lethal if he took you up on it.
That's what I mean, is there was a lot that could have happened there.
I mean, at this point in the game, I was just very confident. I was like, oh, he did exactly what I asked him to make. He's gonna get some builds off of France. eventually. Like I've got him in a good position, like to get Smyrna. Like I just assumed like, oh, we had patched everything up at this point, like all was well. But that's interesting, like to hear that the alliance was already dead in his eyes at this point in time.
And I think it was dead to the point of he'll use you while he's got you, but that was it.
Yeah. I mean, I got that feeling. I think like a year or two later, like that like he basically didn't want to work with me the moment he found a way not to.
Yeah, and I think he was.
Yes, because I figured that that was his view, and I wanted to be able to turn whenever I wanted to. Not
that's what he was looking for sure. And clearly going against Dave, like I don't know, Dave, did you have any expectations of those moves there, or?
This was actually this was a tough tough move for me. Because so I actually had orders to Spain and Mar, or I did have those orders in, and this is a little bit where I get paralyzed because I felt like he was going to I felt like he was going to do that, not because we talked, no intel, I just felt it. There was the potential that he was just using Tuscany and Turanian to just kind of show, do not turn around, don't bring your fleet, like that type of. There was a potential that he could just be showing that, but I felt like he was going. And then, and this is what happens to me sometimes, I've got a good relationship with Tanya. There's no reason for her to do anything. It wouldn't have helped her, but I'm like, but dang it, what if she goes immune to Bert? What if she supports it? Like that type of thing, right?
He didn't even self-bounce.
I just, like I said, I just was like, I think I'm okay. And so this was really frustrating to see these moves come through. Here's the other part. I don't think I really should have gotten to Wales. John doesn't need, I mean, I know he's guessing, if I go Irish to Liverpool, I definitely could have done that. But if he just holds where he's at or supports Wales, I don't necessarily get there. So this, honestly, looking at this right now too, this is another where I could have, if I was a stronger player, I could have said to Tanya last time, I said, don't take Belgium yet, because the convoy from Belgium won't be as obvious. The convoy from Pick to me is a little bit more obvious. But if I would have had Belgium, and she doesn't need Kiel right now. I mean, she doesn't need Kiel. So if I had a build, if I had a build in Marseille, he wouldn't have done this. So this is a situation where to follow about too, where if I'm a little bit better at processing everything, I'm in better shape. So this, I actually believe it was just a bad move for me that I didn't pay for. So good luck on me, I guess.
Well, I think I think all of us have brought up a fact that we seem to be able to focus on our short-term diplomacy and look at our this season and maybe one season ahead, but we all seem to have had the problem with kind of the precognition for 2, 3, 4 years in the future. And obviously it's hard to predict, but when you're making your moves, you have to kind of decide, okay, if I'm making a move now, where does that leave this unit in 2 years? What can it do for me later, rather than what can it do for me now?
Right. Well, when Tanya says, "Hey, Dave, I need Belgium. I'm in the middle. They can all come at me. You don't have an enemy on the other side." And I'm thinking, no, I don't want you to take Belgium, but I don't know why. If I say, and I'm not saying it would have worked, but now I'm thinking, okay, I got to put that in my pocket book for later to say, this is not the time. Give me that build. You don't need Kiel. I'm convoying from Belgium. That's way less predictable. I mean, those are some things that it's like, okay, that would have been better. Mm-hmm.
Tanya, welcome.
Thank you. I can't see you guys.
Chip in whenever you want. My sort of big regret here, now that Tanya entered, is Tanya had asked me to tap Norway on this precise move. And I'm starting to really get worried about the FG. Like, I'm really freaking out. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, those armies can easily shift if they want to. I don't want John to die that quick. What's that going to mean for me? Meanwhile, when I see the moves go down, I'm like, now I got Italy and Galicia. I got all these problems. And this is when Karthik gets to me because, Liam and I tried to work something out, and I agreed that Khan would get blown up, and instead of retreating to Ankara, I just piff it. I had told him that, and as it turns out, when we go to, I didn't do any of the moves that I agreed to with Liam. In fact, Karthik came to me at this moment and was really talking to me about what I was fearing, which was the FG. Okay. All I was thinking about was how to survive long term as a potential player, which is, and I've got to do something here on FG, and A is a lot closer to G than T. So this was entirely in my head, even though I got a fleet in the black, even though I'm going to cripple Liam. But Karthik, do you remember the conversation with me?
Yeah. So like at this point, I'm basically like, telling you like, hey, like the FG is gonna get big. We could go with the RIT that you want, but if you do so, Turkey is going to be 4 turns. That's 2 full game years away from having any fleet they build doing anything to France, right? From even being in a threatening position to a single French center. Whereas if you work with me on Morgante, Rome could be like a fleet built in Rome could be at Marseille within a game year, right? And I could be on Tanya's doorstep in half a game year. And in a single turn, I could be threatening Munich, right? So at this point, I think that's one of the things that I'm decently good at is like painting like a long-term story, like being like a storyteller. And that was the story I painted to him. It's like, if you want to succeed against the FG 3-4 years from now in 1907, 1908, when the game is being decided, you want Morgante and me on your side, not Liam, if we're going to have any chance of stopping them.
And I think that's where I failed here is Ed and I didn't really ask your feelings about the other side of the board, Ed, and the main thing that I really failed to properly communicate was what my sense was from Morgante, with the sense that he wasn't really wanting to work with Karthik anymore, and that he had fully intended to completely turn around and focus on France. And so if both of those things kind of happen, where I get a sense of your fears of the FG, and I have a solution, as in, well, we can decouple with Italy and send him pretty much right to us.
Yeah, I just didn't think that once Italy made it to Syria, no matter that Morgante didn't like Karthik anymore,
yeah,
I was like, he's not going to give up. He's not going to not take Smyrna at this point.
No, and I think he at that point he definitely was intending to do it, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. But I
was going to say is I think this just goes to what I was saying earlier about the only thing that really kept me and Morgante going for a large part of this game was just merely board realities. Both of us could read the board. Neither of us really liked or trusted each other based off of what we were saying. Because as you mentioned, Morgante begged you to bounce him out of the eastern, out of Syria here, so that he could stab me on the next turn. So which I actually didn't know at the time, but I always got that vibe from him. But at this point, I think was when the game basically decidedly turned, and that it was going to be an AIR.
The only kind of thing that I had in my head that was like, oh, this is great, was I was in Serbia. Yeah. I had made it through. And at that point, to me, in my head, I was like, oh, we're in. There's no way that Ed and I don't just roll here. Because if we are on a roll, we can put him into Budapest. We can do a whole bunch of stuff because I knew that Vienna was going to Trieste. Morgante had asked me to bounce you there. He said you were going, and that was that. I was like, well, if he's going to take Trieste, there's no way in hell that I'm going to just bounce him.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, we could take a shot at Budapest. We could do a bunch of stuff. I just in my head that was where it was at, but it just wasn't. wasn't really in the cards. You know, even the pitch I was making to you, Ed, we kind of had a few different thoughts of how it would work. Realistically, we could have taken Budapest with this set of with a very similar set of orders. Romania to Budapest, Serbia with Serbian support, as long as Bulgaria is cutting Greece. We actually get Budapest here and defend Romania. So it's not a bad set of moves. And at that point, there's no way Karthik is... he's still around and can still be a threat, but I don't think he's a viable choice if that's the moves that we put in. But obviously, it's it's not neither here nor there.
At this point, I'm gonna a couple of things, and then I'm gonna let Tanya talk, and then you guys take over while I hunt down my dog here who's chasing cows, and I'll be back. But Tanya really, like, after I didn't tap Norway, she did put the screws to me because she asked me what I was going to do, and I said I'm going to take Norway, and she's like, "Well, you're not going to take Norway unless I get Sweden. You didn't do a favor for me the last time, so I'm not going to do you any favors." And I actually felt like that was fair, so I was like, "Oh fuck, okay, all right. I mean, that's bad." She told me she's moving to Tyrolia, but it was going to be a good thing for me. But she wouldn't tell me like how it was going to be good for me, like what she intended to do after that. Like I was like, well, good, like you're going to attack Austria, good, like you're going to attack Italy, or good that you're just going to help France with, on this Piedmont thing. And I kept asking her, and she kept saying, "Oh, it's a surprise. It'll be a surprise." And I like cross-examined her. She'll tell you like every which way. I'm like, "Where's Kiel going?" She goes, "Kiel's going to where's Munich's going." I'm like, "Where's Munich going?" "Munich's going to Tyrolia." I mean, like, it was like, it's just like talking to my teenager, like on a video game, this whole thing. And then if you realize people are like, "Why is this retreat not in? Why is this retreat not in?" And I'm like, it's not easy for me to stab Liam. I'm not like being an asshole here. Like, I know I could just disband it.
As soon as I saw that, I don't know. Yeah, the first thing that came to kind of mind as a visual was in the Grinch's heart when it kind of just breaks in the cartoon. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened here. If this was Vegas and I was putting money on that retreat, there was no way that I would have bet that you retreated. I would have put money that you disband, and that was that.
I was like, why am I always the guy who has to make the sacrifices? Why can't I be the Tanya? Like, why am I always the guy,
There is no sacrifice here. You literally are taking Romania here.
Yeah.
But also, like, I actually thought, like, given the set of moves, like, like what we and Ed had agreed to, I thought Constantinople was actually moving to Ankara. Like, not going to retreat there, but I thought it was going to move in, which is why I was actually very surprised when I saw the retreat happen. And I was like, okay, I mean, like, no harm, no foul. We got the exact position that, given the set of moves that were ordered, was going to happen anyways.
Yeah. And it's something that we could have even predicted. And if we wanted to do even a little bit cheekier, maybe this was a better set of moves, but would be we could almost guaranteed that Aegean was tapping Constantinople. Yeah. So why not put Aegean into Con and Smyrna out to the Aegean? If everybody's going to get blown up, then go for the position as opposed to anything else.
All right, guys, you guys continue on this set of moves, and I'll be back in like 2-3 minutes while I find my dog.
Sure. The big thing that I was surprised at was Dave's fifth. He had, well, we can talk about two different spots on the map that Dave had great success in defending. Did you have any? Were those all guesses, Dave, or what?
Yeah, I mean, so John pitched me to, obviously, hey, you got trouble in Italy now. I'll be your friend, and it's going to take you forever to get anything done now that I got three. I mean, it's not going to be an easy battle for me now up in his homeland. So I'm for sure going to get one if I go for it. But I could also what he sold was convoy back to France, get that fleet out of there. He said he'd give me. Yeah, you know what? I mean, in some ways, he maybe was being honest. He said he'd give me Liverpool, and but I could convoy or send things the other way. And I mean, that just wasn't going to happen. I was there. I was going to go for it. I don't think that him saying he was giving me Liverpool is the reason why I did this move, as opposed to, the other supporting the other way. But it's what I did. I got lucky and it worked. And then he's just the same thing down south. Like, he could have forced into Marseille. He could have, I guess that is the other thing he could have done.
That's how he would have beaten your set of moves here, was to force it. And
I just felt like, for me, I thought I was losing one, and if it was, I didn't want to give him access to Mao.
Guarantee the defense in Spain, and then deal with the consequences of losing Marseille, if that's how it ended up.
I probably actually could have even recovered if I lost Marseille because of what happened up north. If both of them went poorly, though, if I lose Marseille and only get one,
you were guaranteed London here, though, right?
But I could have gone even on this turn.
You could,
and I think that would have been pretty rough for me.
It definitely would have opened the door for Tanya to do one of two things and say, "Oh, looks like you need a dot. You can have Belgium back," or to just talk with Morgante and figure a way out to come around the horn.
I almost at one point offered Belgium, and then he said, if he's not going to ask for it, why should I just offer it? And then I didn't say anything. And I think, I don't remember what year it was exactly, but if you had been like, I really need Belgium, I would have probably given it to you. But you never asked.
That's funny. Well, on this one, oh, you're talking about later in the game, right? Because this one, I wouldn't have even thought. Like, I was going to try to defend.
Really dumb, because you would have had to have covered Marseille.
I got to defend. So it wouldn't, sure, it guarantees that although actually it would have worked great for me. But no, that wasn't a thought process here.
I don't even understand Piedmont supports Gascony.
Oh, that's to defend against double bounce. So if he orders, if Dave orders Gascony to Marseille, Burgundy to Marseille,
it puts Gascony out of position,
and then just kind of rebuild those.
Yeah, but at this stage, that's like a 1901 move when you don't want France to build in Marseille, not like a fall 1903. Oh, let me get you in Marseille so you don't build in Marseille.
Like what I'm saying is if the possibility did exist that you could get two builds in the north, like Morgan to be like, hey, I want to make, if he does order the set of moves, which is unlikely, but then I'd be able to defend against it. Whereas in any sense, if he's ordering Lyon to Spain, right? If Gascony, if he either gets in, or he doesn't, and if he doesn't get in, that means that Gascony went to Spain, and if he did get in, then he could send Gascony to Marseille and then back.
I will say this is that, I agree, Tanya, as far as when you do this and that type of thing. If this move works, if I tried to self-bounce and he supports me in it, this is one of those, this is a posterizing slam dunk that is shown on ESPN that you get famous for.
Oh, absolutely.
His legs on your shoulders.
Yes. Yeah, so that wasn't gonna happen, I guess.
Okay, let's move on. We got the builds. At this point, I build Army Sev because I don't even really know what to build at this point, but I knew I had angered Liam, and I got a fleet in the black to worry about.
You could have built a fleet here, and because there's a fleet in the black, and if you thought I was mad, I was expecting a fleet, to be completely honest.
I thought about it. I did. But then I'm like, great,
What do you do next?
Well, it's like I'm a Russia with 3 fleets and nowhere to go. This didn't seem like a great thing to do, but All right, spring of 04. This is where I should have piffed Anchor, I think. Morgante asked me not to.
What that had nothing to do with him either, which is hilarious, because what does he matter? Nobody can take Ankara. You couldn't have taken it.
He wanted me to cut. He wanted me to cut black.
cut black. Oh, so he could take Khan, I guess.
Correct. Yeah, but then there became a
But
giant
I had 3 units. I could still defend them all. Like it still wasn't useful.
There became this sort of giant argument that erupted between. This is where I really just wanted to shoot myself in the head. Because I know my game is basically over here. No matter what my center count says, I'm in a tough spot. And the hatred, not hatred, but the arguments between Karthik and Morgante were just like fucking endless. Okay. And they couldn't like agree on who to split up what and whatever. And I'm like, here I am being the asshole stabbing Liam, who I actually wanted, to help win. To get on board with you two who can't agree on anything.
You guys, I was down, I had, when these moves process, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units on my 3.
Yeah.
And I stayed in the game until the end. I simply don't understand. The West was incredibly lucky that I survived as long as I did.
The whole point of this was that we were going to move on Germany and France and all the rest of it.
Not if you have 6 units surrounding 2 Turkish dots.
So the issue here is that Morgante didn't make the move that he was supposed to make.
He could have forced himself into Marseille here.
He was supposed to order Smyrna to Constantinople, which would have prevented, Bulgaria from going there.
Yeah.
And would likely have piffed it. And even if it didn't piff, I mean, I can still.
Oh, I could have retreated to Serbia, but you would have blown it up anyways.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's you said you were gonna piff it. If you had to retreat into Serbia, you said you were gonna piff it. And like you said, even if you didn't, it didn't matter. I could take it back anyways.
Morgante's mad that you built in Trieste.
Yeah.
That's why he is.
No, I hadn't built in Trieste yet. This is before I built in Trieste. This is me taking back Trieste.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. Yeah. I mean, he's mad about something. He's mad about something with you.
The only thing Morgante is mad about me here is that I didn't support him into Constantinople. And I mean, I told him I wasn't going to do it because I was going to take back Bulgaria and Serbia. And then I was going to support him into Constantinople in the fall. And then he was very upset about that.
Which is a reasonable set of moves. I don't personally wouldn't see the problem in that. Yeah. Again, maybe, if your alliance is strong, great. If it's weak, I can understand, if somebody's giving you reluctance, then I could certainly understand the frustration of, he's my only choice and I'm stuck with him. Yeah, and he's not even wanting to work with me. So I can get the frustration behind that.
No. So when Morgante didn't make the move of Smyrna to Constantinople here, just by saying he was going to, is when the alliance was dead in my mind. It would carry on out of necessity, but there was zero goodwill for me to make Morgante there. Because I thought the alliance was still in a decent spot here. I thought I'd patched it up. But then later, in the game, you tell me about him asking to bounce you out of Syria, and then as you mentioned on the stream earlier, when he asked you to bounce him out of Syria in 1903, basically intending for his attack on you to fail, so he could stab me.
Yeah.
It was clear that Morgante thought the alliance was dead even earlier for whatever reason. So I think part of the issue is that we just never really wanted to work with each other, but we kind of had to by reality.
Yep. All right, Dave, Tanya, talk about your side of the board.
I don't really have much to say, but I did have a friend who watched the DBN stream this morning, and he messaged me and he was like, "What was up with Italy and Austria in that game?" So
I mean, my question for Tanya, and there's multiple times where it's happened, the holds. Why wouldn't Holland at least support Belgium here? There's 2 units on it that technically, not that they were really going to work together, but you'd kick yourself in the face if they took it and that was that. Is there a reason you just decide not to support them?
Are you sure it's not supporting?
Holland and Belgium are holding.
Yeah, they're both holding.
Oh,
is that just a mistake?
No, probably not. I don't know. Sometimes I like to just project confidence in my ally, and it makes my ally sometimes feel more comfortable.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if it actually works or not, but when I feel very, very certain that I'm not going to get stabbed, I will sometimes just do things like this just
Yeah.
because I'm like, well, what difference is it going to make? And it's very rarely ever bitten me in the ass.
Yeah, it like in this case, it's not rarely going to happen. I guess to me, and maybe this is just me reading
like
it.
there's 2 units on Belgium, but they're different. Like one is John.
And that's what I mean. And in this case, it's incredibly unlikely, but certainly not impossible.
Yeah.
Like if John was said, you know what, I'm done with Tanya. I'm done with everything, John. I will convoy London into Belgium for you. Like, you know, whatever. It's certainly possible. So that's always my like. Well, if it's possible, try to defend against it.
I guess in a way it's possible, but the other thing is kind of like, you know, never mind. I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Hey, I'm going to say,
I had something to say about like North moving to Bell, but I really don't. I guess.
Well, maybe Dave has some insight in terms of what he read from those moves.
Well, yeah, I mean, I probably, if you wouldn't have mentioned it, I wouldn't have noticed that she was holding her support. And I can say this though, it's both my personality, my style of play, but also strategic going in. Once Tanya and I were allies, I did nothing that would make Tanya think that she needed to worry about a stab, especially a 1-dot stab or something like that. You felt comfortable, Tanya, right?
And the other thing is, I knew like there was really no chance John and Dave were going to work together, right? So that would be the only
not
way
at this
I could
point.
lose Bell. So I don't even think I felt the need to enter those moves.
I just feel like, at least from my perspective, I always just feel like a compulsive need to enter in an order for every unit, even if they're like completely useless or like ultimately meaningless. Like even if there were no units around in there, I probably would feel the need to have like Holland support always on there.
Issue with support.
So I used to be like that, I think, and then I don't know if this is true, but I'm pretty sure like I watched one of the really early streams where Andrew Goff used to give commentary, and he said something to the extent of how he always like does something really, you know, just that makes him seem like he's not a threat, so he doesn't move some units, or he just like moves them in weird places, or he, you know, doesn't do something that you would expect that to happen. And I wonder if I just like subconsciously took that advice, and then sometimes I just like hold stuff when I could be doing other things, and, you know, just like making it seem like, hey, I'm just kind of here, like you don't have to worry about me, right? Whereas like when you support all things, you're like, oh, she's worried, you know. So I just...
here's another thought, and I don't think this plays into this, but let's say, so next move, I'm in the channel in Burgundy, and Tanya just held, right? So the next move, if I'm like, look at her, she's being lazy, I could take Bell, but she's just baiting me, you know. She's just, and then she supports,
and then she does the support,
and she supports, and then because, you know, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, sometimes you kind of want somebody to pick a fight with you. And I am not saying that this played into that at all here, but that is kind of a funny idea to like, oh my gosh, look at him, I could get it next time. And then you support, you go for it, you don't get it, and it's like, all right, it's on, let's go.
I do this in gunboats for sure.
Projecting with the moves is obviously important. I mean, to me, it reads confidence more than anything. Even if that's not what you're trying to display, that's what I get out of it, is that you're confident in your position and your ally, that it doesn't really matter.
I remember what I was trying to say now earlier. I just don't think I'm a very paranoid player anymore. I just feel like that kind of hinders you more than it helps. And maybe that's why I choose to... I think I held Holland quite a few times. I mean, Belgium quite a few times in this game, actually. Why I didn't do it this year might have been... You know, no, I couldn't tell you. Like, here, obviously, I couldn't because I convoyed it over, but like... I think most of the time
this sort of reminded me. I mean, I was thinking. I mean, I knew Norway may be under attack, but to make an analogy, I was very serious with a girl in my 20s, and I thought I was going to get married to her. Until one day, she just told me that what we had was a friend love, and like, I sat here looking at this, and I was like, I just assumed she'd tell John to do this, but then she would still take Edinburgh. Then I'd have a convoy to worry about the next time. I didn't think it was going to be an 04. And Tanya, to your credit, I mean, you're always keeping people a little bit on their heels, right? And so this was just a fantastic move. And as much conflict as Morgante and I had in this game, he did exactly what he agreed to in this moment, which was not retreat to Warsaw, because we obviously knew that was a potential a thing that could happen. Hell, I supported Budapest to Galicia. I think Tanya remarked on it at the time. Like,
he didn't retreat.
Vienna.
He could have taken Vienna or Warsaw with the retreat, but I think the PIF made more sense so that he could actually rebuild in Rome as Dave's, barreling down in that direction.
And I think, like, if he had retreated into Warsaw, I would have been very happy, because I mean that would just have given me the game. Like I'm convinced at that point, like, I just like would give me every single one of his dots, like, and like, I think Morgante realized it was not in his interest to either take Vienna either, because then, like, I'm like, okay, well, France can take all the Italian dots. Like, I just don't think there's any way to read them out.
Vienna was a deadly one. Warsaw was feasible for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
We're about to see my last ditch effort at trying to get Ed to play a game, but he.
I didn't know how a 2-center turkey was going to advance my game, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say one more thing about the fact that I didn't hold. I think that was also a spring move.
Yeah, correct.
I didn't think that
correct.
A stab on Belgium is a spring move. So yeah, that's all.
Karthik, here you have to give me some credit for what would have happened had we taken Silesia. Remember that discussion about the retreat of?
Yeah. Yes. Correct. Then the retreat to Galicia was possible. So in this case, had we done what I suggested, it would actually have ended up fine, because we would have.
Yeah. Correct.
But no, like, I'm glad that you pointed out to me. I just wasn't paying attention.
It wouldn't have made any difference here, but yeah, you're right. I was happy to have one tactical suggestion.
No, it was very good.
Okay. Tanya, Dave, this is really what I wanted to talk about here, which is John. You didn't. I mean, you could have gotten Dave into Edinburgh now, I guess, if you wanted to.
I did not want to. I never wanted Dave in Edinburgh, because at this point I was 1 center ahead of him, and if he ties with me in centers, he wins the tiebreaker. So my thing was always, I'm going to be a center ahead of Dave for as long as I can be a center ahead of Dave, and there was just no way I was giving him all of England. And so yeah, I very actively did not want that to happen. And John's fleet was helping me at that point. So I was like, why should I eliminate John, whose fleet is helping me, for you to get another unit and then beat me in
But does Dave ask for support? Dave, did you ask for support here?
Okay, so on this one, yeah, but then as we look at the move,
I said I had to support Hold Norway or something like that.
Which you did. I mean, whether you did or didn't, if this is gunboat, you do. Right? Because he's got 3 on it. Yeah. So, and on that note too, is I was like, of course I asked for it. I wanted Eddie, so for me, like that type of thing. But I was also, again, right or wrong, we've talked about this. I was okay in this game with my experience and where I'm at to be, 1 behind and kind of, not having to have that target. So of course I would have taken it. I would have wanted it. I'm not sure what I would have done with early success though.
I like the way you're talking about it. So you moved back to London.
Yeah. Okay. So you're onto this one though now. This is totally different. You're on to fall.
So what happened here is John is like, he's multiple personality disorder.
He gets a build here.
Kind of the way they described this on the stream is sort of what happened in a number of different ways. But But I come into his room and he's like, just give Tanya the game. And I'm like, I don't give anybody a game. I mean, like I go, I'm not going to win this game, and I said this multiple times, I'm on my side. Okay. I'm just trying to maximize my centers and see if I have a role at the end. And I go, John, I'll double support you into Norway. That's double support. I'm going to give up St. Petersburg. I can defend it for one more season, but it's gone after that. Double support you. He goes, I don't want your double support. I just want Tanya to win. And I'm like, okay.
So he takes Norway anyways.
Problem solved. So I had Finland Barents supporting St. Petersburg, and I'll just hold off the inevitable for, another season. Okay, fine. But I was hoping, he comes back to me, goes, Dave's moving. He's moving to London. He goes, put that double support back in. And I go, okay. I go, are you going to build a fleet? And he Tanya's me. He's like, oh, I don't really know what I'm going to build. And I'm like, you won't even I need help. I need help too, John. I'm in just as bad a shape as you are, just in the future. I'm the future role of John. Okay. Imagine your situation. I'll think about it. I'm like, all right, screw it. So I do that. But Tanya, that was my only diplomatic victory of the entire game was
I should have known. I thought, here was my thinking. I was like, okay, why would he work with Ed when Dave and I are the ones who can just eliminate him out of the game? And so why poke, why do you bite the hand that feeds you or whatever, right? So I was like, is he going to do that? Like, probably not, because then we can just turn around and take Eddie like this. And then he did that. And then
not if there's an army in Eddie.
Yeah, not if there's an army.
No, but he gets eliminated either.
It'll take 2 years.
It takes some time.
So Dave,
fine, but if he hadn't done that, I would never have I probably would never have eliminated him.
Yeah. So
I'm not sure what you're actually thinking.
So okay, first of all, I see this is recorded. Is this going up somewhere at some point?
I'll send you all the link.
So I don't
go on the internet forever.
Okay, I got interviewed about my first loser top board thing from DBN stuff. So I talked about this one a lot, and I'll let some of that happen there. But I will say this: this is where I feel like I really kind of lost. Like I was letting Tanya run this show, and I was very happy to have that happen. I asked for things when she said no. I put up Tanya, maybe on this one, this was probably the biggest fight. Would you say that?
I think Eddie ultimately, who got Eddie at the end was probably the biggest fight. But this one,
okay, you're right. Eddie in 07 was the biggest fight. This one,
I wanted to bounce you off Eddie. I remember that.
That's right.
I suggested we bounce each other off Eddie.
So I'll tell you a few things about my thought process. One is when the game started, I was France. It seemed like Tanya was a good ally. My target was England. I did at one point say, hey, no, I think you go get Russian dots. I get English dots. She always was talking about how I wasn't going to get Eddie. And this one, there was a point, and I don't remember if I ever offered it, Tanya, but there was definitely a point where I was like, frickin', I'll support you into Eddie. I need John out of this game.
And I still said no.
Yeah. Okay. So I did say that. I at least feel better that I said that because I put that in there. But here's the deal. I just give this. I've learned this lesson before that I can't let England survive here. Tanya wanted him to survive, but I'm just giving, Ed, I know John gave credit to you because he and I chatted about it a little bit, but John just gave such an amazing speech. I just loved it. It was just such an amazing speech about how Tanya and I had this game won. Let's just disengage and go your opposite ways and go pick up your dots everywhere. And the whole time I'm like, I got my order into Eddie.
No, it was so funny because I was like, Dave, let's bounce off Eddie this turn.
Yeah.
How we, and Dave goes, no, that's fine. I'll walk it back to London. And I was like,
well, I just hated it, but I hated it the whole time. This was my I know that I can take heat for Fall 07. For me, this was my worst move. This right here was the worst move of my game. Just this is where I'm not saying I lost it here, because I could have done things in Fall 07 to have, you know, to change it also. But this was where I lost. I don't even know the word. I don't want to say confidence or momentum. There was something here when that freaking fleet built, or when he built that, when that fleet was in Norway, when this turn changed. And then I'm like, frick, there's going to be something in Eddie. I just,
well, it could have gotten worse. I'll tell you about 06 in a second, but
yeah, re-center England in 06.
But and this actually, in a lot of ways, it did, because I mean, it took me 2 years. It took me 2 years to deal with it, and I got lucky that it didn't take more. Yeah, this was the one. This was the one that, I just really wish I would have stuck to this one thing that I wanted all game long, even if it was her going in.
Well, 06 is where it did it for me, because
I would say if Tanya like turned down my support, like if I offered to support her into to Edinburgh, and then she turns that down as well, I think at that point I would just be like taking Belgium. I'd be like, if you want my support in and you want to support me in, so that
but it didn't make sense at the time, right? Like, we have a fleet up there that's helping us, and it would be turns before I got a fleet
more helping you than helping him.
Well, yeah, but that's the issue.
We're an alliance, right? Like,
yeah, but this was my failure. I still believe this was 100% my failure, because it was helping you, Tanya, but it wasn't helping me. But at the same time, I want to go back and say there's a few things here. Actually, I'm still looking at Fall 05, but don't change it. Is I'm getting Tunis. So I am going to 8. If I take Eddie, and I don't know, I mean, there's no way for me to explain how much, even though John was given that wonderful speech, and even though Tanya was on board, how long it took me to change that order. And then let's see, was it? Oh yeah, and then I talked to Jackson after the game, and we were walking through this, and he's like, "This is when you should have taken Eddie and Bell with English Channel, and you win the game." And I'm like, dude, like, I don't even know.
I don't think there's so many years left. I would have just thrown everything at you, and Italy was still fighting you at that time. Like, there's a lot of chance for Austria to get ahead. Like,
yeah. Also, Tanya, when he said that, like, I think she gets over that one, especially when John's in Norway. I think she'd be like, okay, you know, I don't think I win the game. Jackson just said that's what he does at this point. And I'm like, I feel like I was still good with her.
Yeah, I think that would have been too premature, in my opinion. Especially if I'm holding all the Austrian armies back. Like, why dot me for one to get where, you know? Like, no.
Yeah, but Eddie for sure I should have. Belgium, I'm still fine that I didn't. But I guess there is
Eddie, if you had taken it and John hadn't stabbed, I would have been like, fuck this. With John moving to Norway, I would have definitely been like, okay, like, that's fine. I forgive you, you know? So,
yeah.
So there were interesting things in the East at this point, which is we knew Karthik would take Warsaw and I would take Budapest. And the question is what to do with Sevastopol, at least from my perspective. And I said I'd move it to Ukraine, which makes a lot of sense. But then we're in a room, Dave, me, and Karthik. Actually, two stories, and we are working, Dave, like you could not believe. I mean, I don't know if it's possible to put more pressure on a human being in this situation. I mean, you know, I would have, you know, if I could have come up with better arguments, I would have. Instead, it was just like, what the fuck are you doing? I mean, you know, like, you got to make the move. Karthik would support him into Munich. And then I start looking, because the impassioned speech had gone for Tanya. And everyone is this between Tanya, Karthik, and Dave. And I start thinking to myself of that British movie with John Cleese where he goes, it's not the losing that hurts, it's the hope. And so I started to have some hope, right? You know, I'm like, if Karthik's going to get Smyrna, which I knew was going to happen. If if Karthik takes Venice, which I was pretty sure was going to happen at that point, and take Warsaw, I was like, I'm getting something. I'm getting something more out of this deal, and that's why I moved to Romania there, because it was just like I wasn't just going to give Karthik the game at that point. But the other funny thing was John, because it was talked about on the broadcast a bit. John gave this impassioned speech. He went around to everybody.
Didn't even went around. No. He asked in the winter of 05, of the previous winter, hey, don't go away in the spring. I have a speech.
Right.
And everybody's kind of like, what the hell is he going to talk about? Like,
so now I double supported him into Norway. Double supported him into Norway.
Yeah.
And he comes to me and he goes, how can we help Tanya win this game?
He came to me and he said, I want you to win this game. And I said, you just fucking moved to Skagerrak. That was the closest to angry. I was angry. I was like, are you making fun of me? I actually said that to him. I was like, it sounds like you're making fun of me and I don't appreciate it. And he was like, I'm not making fun of you. I'm serious.
He's like, I'm just going to move to Norwegian. And I go, John, why are you in the cult of Tanya? You're playing a game in which you're trying to win. Okay? You can't win, but you're in this cult and you're making these speeches to everybody. He's like, what should I do? I go, that's maximum worry for her. Maximum. It puts all her
I thought what he was doing was trying to paint a target on my back by going around and telling everyone that he wants me to win the game. And then he moves to Skagerrak, right? Like, that's what I thought was going on.
You can thank me for that. I was like, you got to move there to get out of the cult of Tanya. Okay? I mean, she's got a lot of problems at that point. And so he does that, which I thought was hilarious.
Well, it's good for you, right? Now I have to use my every unit to try and defend my centers, which meant I couldn't take Moscow, or I would have taken Moscow that turn, right? So,
right. So what I'll say is, I think this is the turn, the previous turn, rather, the diplomacy in the previous turn. Right here is basically what ends me and Morgante forever, right? We were basically in an alliance of convenience, up until this point, all trust was burned when he sent Smyrna to Constantinople, right? When he failed to send Smyrna to Constantinople in 1904. For him, apparently according to Liam, the alliance between me and him was dead in 1903 because he just wanted to stab me from then onwards. He just couldn't find a good way to do so. But then he basically comes into me middle of the turn and says, hey, Karthik, we need to talk. And he's like, hey, I'm taking Greece. And I'm like, no, you're not. And then he says, no, I'm taking Greece, Karthik. You're going to give me Greece. It's well, why do you need Greece? Give me Greece. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to give you Greece. And then at that point, I think Liam comes and talks to me. I'm not sure how he knew that me and Morgante were having this fight.
Because I knew it was happening. So I knew Morgante was at least fighting since the beginning.
Yeah. And it's so Liam comes to me and basically gives me the story of Morgante from 1903 to 1906, and basically everything he was trying to do to destroy me, while technically working with me. And then he's like, here, Karthik, he asked me to support Constantinople to Smyrna, or no, he offered me support from Ankara to Smyrna. I'm not going to take it, but you should be these are the moves that are going to happen. And I'm like, I don't know what I did to deserve Liam here, but I was so happy it happened. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to get Ed to go down to Bulgaria, take it. I'm going to get him to walk out of Budapest, and I'm going to defend Greece, and I'm going to take Venice. Because when I told Morgante earlier in the turn that I wasn't going to take Venice at this point, I didn't have the desire to, that was genuine. I was going to wait until, he was absolutely no longer useful to me. I was hoping France would be so out of position here, and so stalled out that Tanya would eventually be like, hey, you go after France, I'm going to go after Italy. And then if that had happened, I think I could have gotten France to come back up and then run through Germany. Whether or not that would have happened, who knows? But at least I had a chance, I think. But then when Morgante kept going after Greece, I was like, you know what? The rest of the game can go on hold for now. Like, Morgante is going to die. Everything else is secondary. Like, this is just ridiculous. And
I
then
had 0 plans to stab Dave. Like,
I became aware of that later. But I thought if I could create a position where it was obviously worthy, maybe it could happen. But anyways, if we go to the next turn, Ed. And then here we see what the supports were. We see the balance in Greece, and we see me taking benefit. And at this point, the fight between me and Morgante is on for the rest of the game, essentially.
So I did want to ask you about that, Karthik, because I wondered if that was an arranged bounce.
No, this is not arranged. This was we were at war. This was not arranged. Because I wanted to cover that, especially because of what was talked about on the stream. It's like, oh, was this arranged? And then why did Morgante waste all of those units if it was an arranged bounce? Because it wasn't arranged.
Well, that's a weird. It would have been weird because he would have actually taken Wes here if he had the Wes. He could have guaranteed him. Well, not guaranteed, but he could have taken Wes if he had taken a shot at it.
So a couple of things. One is that pressure that Ed and Karthik were putting on me. Like right now, I all of a sudden have a stupid fight with England still because of my idiocy, right? And then now I'm fighting Italy, and then Karthik and Ed are saying go take Munich, so then I'd be fighting Germany. That just seemed, I feel like that was, if I made a good decision that day, I feel like that one actually was one. Now how I don't know. Karthik, I just never gave you a straight answer the whole game. I mean, that's
I think that was why I was so angry.
I know, but I don't know. It's not. I mean, it's just But okay, so I actually thought, this might be an arranged bounce in Greece because Morgante says, "Hey, I'm backing off. I'm backing off. I'm going to try to kill he's giving me all that stuff, and it makes sense, like what he's saying." He did encourage me maybe to go ahead and go to Mao and that type of stuff, and I said I'm not going to. I'm supporting. You're not getting anything important right now. I didn't even tell him I was moving Mao, like that type of stuff. So when it happened, I was like, he's sticking around, but that is not the case. So okay.
So just on the John part of it here, Dave.
Yeah.
I got in this room with John. He's like, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm like, I go, you 100% hold in Liverpool. I go 100%. I go, he's gonna move to York. And John's like, no, he's gonna go to Eddie. He's gonna bounce me in Eddie. And I'm like Eddie's not guaranteed, that's not going to happen. I mean, I predicted exactly what was going to happen here, right? And so, but on the other end of it, he's like, I'm just going to move to Norway. And I'm like, I think Norway's going to bounce. I predicted Baltic to Denmark. I thought Finland would go to, Sweden.
Well, I thought you told him to go to Norway when he wanted to go to Sweden.
No, I think that, okay, he can correct me because he'll have a better memory of it. But I honestly thought, I told him he didn't have to go to Norway, that I'd bounce him there. That I'd bounce her there because I thought she'd just throw one unit at it. And I think he became a little paranoid that I would get Norway, if I did that, even though I was for sure there was going to be a bounce. And he had talked about Sweden, and I'm like, I think she's going to cover Sweden. And so it ends up, I think I was basically, I kind of talked him out of it by saying that, but I was right on the one and wrong on the other. But I mean, it's just tough for him.
Yeah.
But imagine England with another build here.
Oh God.
I'd have left.
That would have been the end of that would have been the end of Dave's shot, any sort of shot for sure.
Well, it's just funny to think now. I knew that there were mistakes were made, but it's funny. When I on this one, not only did I not take Eddie a couple moves ago, but I went to London instead of maybe going to Liverpool or holding Yorkshire, something like that. Yeah. And then because of that, he gets Liverpool. I mean, he has it, and it's like every every important like strategic decision I needed to make, I failed, but every lucky coin flip I got. So that's why I was hanging around at the end.
Yeah. I tried to tell John, like, look, if he goes to Eddie and you bounce him, okay, great. But anyways.
This one's a coin flip, I think. I mean, it's one or the other. I still think, and Tanya, I don't remember what your original move was. Would it have saved everything in this situation?
Actually, temporarily left.
Yeah, temporarily
okay.
away.
Well,
okay.
Yeah,
All
no,
right.
We'll still go back to it when she gets back.
yeah.
All right.
So the chaos in the East still remains, and there's it gets a little more tenuous.
Mm-hmm. So actually, when I was like looking back at the stream the first time, I was actually confused when Brandon said it's like talking about like how it's like a viper tooth of like, oh sorry, viper's nest or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, because I thought, man, I don't think I told Rush any lies, and me and Liam didn't really talk that much like at this point. I was like,
it was just listening to you and Morgante.
I think when he said some players were less duplicitous than I thought, I pegged Liam for that. Yeah. And some players were more duplicitous. I picked you and Morgante for that.
Yeah.
I put on just as duplicitous as we expected.
That many lies to Morgante either, for that matter, except for Trias. Like I think that was the only lie I ever told to Morgante really about what I was going to do. But now, like seeing what was going on with like the ask for a bounce in Syria and like some of the other machinations in the East, like it suddenly makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
What he was saying about it being like, a viper den of lies or whatever it was. It definitely was.
So Liam, you veto the draw here.
So after these builds, I think people are there are a handful of reasons. They're tired. It's obviously the first real time that Tanya's ahead of Dave when play potentially could just be over. I think it was her that proposed the draw and John seconded, and there was ask for a verbal veto. And at this point, I'm thinking, no, Dave's still got play. Like Morgante's just disbanded the front line there. We'll Karthik and I or somebody will take Khan. There's another disband right there from him. Like that'll allow Dave to push in. So I'm thinking he's going to jump at the chance to veto. But as the call for verbal vetoes goes out, nobody really says anything. And I'm like, you know what? No, the game shouldn't end here. We can keep going. And I was like, as a one power center, the most power I have is to veto a draw and keep you all at the table.
And I think Karthik had expressed frustration with Dave at this point.
And the other thing was Karthik too. Like there was 3 people. Karthik had a lot of play left, really.
I didn't think I had much of a chance with Morgante throwing. I was like, I'm doomed. Dave, Dave was not listening. Dave, I'd asked for Dave for the past 2 turns, and he said yes, and then it never came to me. So I was like,
that was not intentional. That wasn't intentional, but it was a failure on my part.
Yeah. So I was like, if I can't get a hold of Dave, even to begin a conversation, and Morgante's going to be actively throwing, I'm like, oh man, I have no path to victory at that point, right? It's maybe I get Constantinople from Liam. That gets me to 9, but
where's next?
Well, where do I get 10 from?
So you go in a room before these moves, and I'm just sort of hanging out, chilling, and when you go in the room, I mean, you basically said, if Dave does what I've suggested, it's on. But if Dave doesn't do what I suggested, then I'm on Team Tanya. Is that this setup? This is then, right?
Yes, this is then.
And then you said Dave didn't make the moves. So what moves did you want Dave to make?
So I wanted him to let's see. Can we go to the next page?
Yeah, I feel like it's the next one.
It's this. This is the one that's the critical set of moves, I think.
I think I wanted him to take Naples or something like that. No. The final ultimatum was later, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is when Tanya takes Eddie. This is when Dave finally says no more to John, rather than forcing himself upon Eddie. That Tanya convinces him to put her in.
Yeah, and I think the ultimatum to Dave comes later, actually, if I recall.
So there was another draw vote proposed at the beginning of fall this year, and I vetoed it again. I was like, I'm still alive. Why? Really, nothing's changed. I'm going to do it again. Give everybody as much political cover as they can have with a veto. Like, you don't want to be the guy who's one below to veto, and everybody's like, oh, why? Well, I guess you're my enemy. I'll go for you. I'm a one-centered dot. I'm everybody's enemy. Nobody cares what I think. Yeah. So. At this point, I'm in full self-preservation mode. I'm in keep myself alive, keep myself as give myself as much power and control on the board that I can have, that I can stir the pot as much as is available. So that's the idea behind the.
Karthik, why didn't we defend Warsaw again?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is okay. Yeah, talk about that, please.
Okay, yeah. So I think. At this point, the reason why we didn't defend Warsaw with Galicia is that we assumed that Tanya would be able to take Warsaw eventually if she wanted to, by tapping Moscow. On the stream they talked about how if she did tap Moscow at St. Petersburg, that it did put St. Petersburg at risk of being taken by Ed. Okay. But I actually don't really think that's important. If I'm like a Germany, if I'm anyone in the north, right, and I have the opportunity to trade getting Warsaw for St. Petersburg, and I have 3 years left in the game,
that's a trade I'd take any day.
Every single every single day of the week, twice on Sundays, right? It's the easiest trade ever. So I assumed that if she wanted it, she'd be getting it. The only thing that I was hoping for was that she would be going for Moscow instead, or going for Bohemia instead. And I could take advantage of that specific subset of orders to take Silesia and also put myself in Tyrolia. I wasn't.
You could have stopped me out of Warsaw here.
Yeah.
No, yes, I could have kept you out of Warsaw with this specific set of orders. But my view is that if you wanted Warsaw, it was going to be yours no matter what we did, because Moscow could easily be cut by St. Petersburg at any time if you wanted to. And I felt like that was a very obvious trade to make. To give up St. Petersburg for a year or two, when you could easily get it back and force it from the north in the future, in order to get across the line into Warsaw, which would be a much more valuable center to hold.
I think the center just won me the game.
Yeah, no,
Warsaw was the nail in the coffin.
I agree with the game. So my view is that if you wanted Warsaw, you were going to get it, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I should defend against a subset of orders where you don't go for Warsaw, which would include you targeting Moscow or targeting Bohemia for a future position. So therefore I made a set of orders that would work under those circumstances to get me Silesia, which would then put at least some more pressure on Munich in addition to getting Vienna into Tyrolia. Basically it was like, in any set of movesets where you seriously make a play on Warsaw, it was guaranteed to be yours. But if you choose not to, then I have a chance to put myself in position to come back and win the game with a very small percentage likelihood. So I figured if I defend Warsaw successfully here, I still don't have much of a shot to win the game because I don't have a path to 9, 10, or whatever. But if I do guess correctly here, and you choose not to go for Warsaw and you go for Moscow or Bohemia instead, this makes me valuable to Dave again and can at least create the potential for something to happen, whereas me defending Warsaw just prolongs the inevitable.
Is this when you suggested the moves to Dave, or was it the next spring?
No, it's going to be the next spring once Morgante built in Naples.
But this is where I lost the game, though, and I didn't realize I was losing it when I was doing the stuff and now I'm actually. It's funny because all the whole 3 days since I've been like, I didn't think she was getting Warsaw. So this is where we had our biggest, disagreement about Eddie. She was not, it wasn't tied anymore. I was going to be down 2. but I shouldn't have been down 2 because I should have taken Naples. 100% should have taken Naples. Stupid. Should have gone TYS to Naples, west to TYS, and in Ionian, which means I think I was. And then I still would have gotten rid of that Austrian Tuscany based on that, because I was concerned about the future of getting Rome and Naples, because I know, Karthik, you didn't want me to get that, but I would have.
And you could have stopped her from Eddie, and you could have taken Belgium.
No, and I could have taken Belgium. This was, I mean, what I want to say is, in the moment, I did not have the sense of urgency that was necessary for how important this move was. And I also, and it's really frustrating, more so right now, because, you know, part of the deal is, yeah, she's going for Warsaw, but she's not going to get it. But now, as I'm like, oh, but she could have. You're right. You're exactly right. She hits Moscow, gets Warsaw. Sure, there's risk. And I don't really feel like in the moment, I realized that it was, you know, not only, I just thought it wasn't going to happen. And here it very much likely could and did, even if Gal supports Warsaw. So,
for the record, I also didn't think it was going to happen. So I was on the same boat as you, that's why I fought the way I did, because I was like, I'm not getting Warsaw, because like I should not have gotten Warsaw there. So.
Right. And I also want to say something about,
you probably shouldn't have, but
yeah, I want to say something about Eddie in this situation is, like I said, you guys, I'm new to this. So 1907 doesn't mean, you know, mid game, end game. It just means we got some time. I've got Rome and Naples coming. I got a path. I didn't do enough. I wasn't concerned enough about, well, what's she going to do with the builds in Kiel and Berlin, like some of that type of stuff. But yes, because I didn't win, now if we could go back to this move, I would not give her Eddie. I would take Belgium and I would take Naples. And then Tanya and I would fight afterwards. And I don't know. But in the moment, I thought that we were slow and steady. I did think, and this is probably stupid too, I was thinking, hey, I don't want her in North though. So if she's not going to give me Eddie, and I need John gone, because then I can actually use a fleet, that Irish fleet, to go do something else. That was my thought process, and it's just proven to have been all wrong.
Well, I don't know if it's proven. I actually don't know that it's been proven. It's proven that you didn't win, but
sure,
I'm not convinced that if you had made those set of moves, which would have been in your best, perhaps short-term interest, it would probably been in the long-term interest of Karthik.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And that's a struggle I have in these situations, is when I make that move, yeah, obviously it hurts Tanya and helps me, but who else does it help? And then Tanya's coming, you know, there is no way to live this alternate reality of what would have happened after. No. But I want to be clear, it was not going to happen. Like that's not what my mindset was at the time. I actually thought Tanya and I had, you know, another couple years of just kind of rolling this board and you know, who knows?
I thought we did too, really. And, you know, in another game, in a tournament, I would not have gunned for that protection of my 11 centers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in this game with Italy and Austria, just
back and forth.
Like, yeah. I don't know what happened. I was not paying attention to that side for the longest time. And then all of a sudden they're fighting and I'm like, this is great. And then I get into Warsaw. If I don't get into Warsaw, we keep going, you know? So I think that's what really.
I will say this.
What did you want Dave to do?
On this one?
Yeah. You want to take it, Dave?
You're going to have to make it real clear, but I know you wanted me to take Naples and let you take Rome. I know that's what you wanted for sure. And what was the other thing? Because that one I don't know.
So basically, I think what I wanted from you here was I wanted you to put me into Rome, and then I wanted Apulia basically to be blown. I wanted the army in Naples to be blown up. I was going to send Venice to Apulia, Tiroli to Venice. And then after that, you were going to support me into Rome and Naples in exchange for me putting pressure on Tanya to potentially get you the win. because I figured like once Tanya got Warsaw,
Mhm.
the only way that you were gonna win is if you went headfirst at her, and
Yep.
The clock really started once that happened. Like there was a timer.
Well, it was
at that
funny
point.
because I like right when this was another one, when she got Warsaw and then it said 11-8 instead of 10-8.
Yeah.
I remember I think it was the next negotiation. I said, Tanya, you want to talk? And then I believe what I said was, what are you thinking now? I think they said on the stream that I said, how do we balance? I don't think I said, I think I said,
No.
what are you thinking now? Which is pretty much what I usually say. And you said exactly what I would have been thinking, which is I'm going to try to win, and then I think we just amicably said, all right, let's go. Because there was nothing. I mean, it's not like I was going to do anything for you. You're going to do anything for me at that point. I think, a better player playing France right now in spring of 08 still has a shot. I don't know that I had it in me.
I don't know you had much of a shot. I would have been really frustrated with me and Morgante at this moment when
Okay, but
I'm
let's
telling
say this.
Tanya,
Yeah.
I'm on Team Tanya, which
Yeah.
I mean, I convinced her to go. I didn't convince her, but I told her, let me go to Norwegian. I can support you and Eddie, and I did, and I didn't want to break my word to her, but like, Morgante's, so you're on Team Dave now, and I'm like, if you don't take Bulgaria, I'm on Team Dave.
Okay, so go to spring. No, go to fall 08.
So, the other thing to point out was I believe spring was 08 was when you publicly vetoed Dave. Is that correct?
Yeah. I was gonna private veto the other ones.
You said you wanted. I believe you said when there was no public vetoes, they were about to split everybody off. You said, you know what? No, I don't want to waste the time. We're on the clock. I'm vetoing. Let's go.
Yeah, and part of it was this. I think my feeling was that throughout the game, because I wouldn't pull the trigger, right or wrong, I feel like it was right. I feel like I gave myself a shot to win by letting Tanya bring me along, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to pull the trigger at the right time. We don't know when the right time would have been because I didn't do it, or it could have been like that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
But there was a point where I was starting to feel, definitely when I vetoed out loud or publicly, I was feeling like, okay, forget about any other part of this game right now. Ed, Karthik, like the ones that really had some power to not win, but to decide, didn't think that I had done enough. And I don't, Karthik, you were saying I annoyed you, but I also didn't do enough. Like I didn't take Eddie. I didn't fight for it. And so I felt like the public veto at least would say I am trying. And I don't know if you guys even cared about that or thought about that throughout. But I felt like, okay, I don't know if they know that I'm actually trying to win, which I was. I was trying to win. I just wasn't winning.
So that public veto actually did make a difference, I think, because I think you called me back to talk to you like in this turn after you had not followed through with what I wanted you to, and I think we did talk this turn as well about it. And I at least heard you out,
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you didn't publicly veto it, I just would have said, no, I'm Team Tanya all the way. Like I still stayed on Team Tanya.
Yeah.
Afterwards, but I at least heard you out because you did choose to publicly veto it.
I looked at this move this morning actually, and I thought, okay, if I could go back and do this again, take Greece with Ionian, which I know that's against Karthik, but I take it there. I give Karthik Rome, and I take Naples with Rome. I add 2, which I think I did anyway. I get to 10, and then the biggest thing. I mean, one would have been, hey, Karthik, defend your centers from Tanya, which it might have been too late by now with the Moscow and Galicia stuff. And if on this move I somehow get Ed to give me Eddie, and I did offer this, have Ed take Eddie, we are tied at that point. She's in much better position, but if everybody else on the board was willing to give me a shot, then I had a shot. But I started all this by saying a better player might have been able to do that in the moment. I did it 3 days later.
I was just really tired at this point. Even though I kept the game going for petty reasons probably, but in any event, it was over here, I think, in your mind, and then we slowly whittle down Morgante to 1.
And this is the end, correct?
And
Yeah.
it's the end. But Tanya, I mean, congratulations. I mean, first of all, I mean, you didn't lie like, I think you said on the DBN broadcast. That's true. I don't know if anyone here would contradict you. You never lied to me. You just exercised rightful bargaining power. You found the right ally. You found his victory conditions, and it's a well-deserved victory. And I mean, you could have done more damage to me, and yet, you kept me in your good graces. Not that means anything, but you only did what you had to do.
Yeah, I don't like needlessly taking when I don't have to, right? Like, no, it was a good game, and I think I did. I don't remember telling anyone not the truth, or if I didn't want to say it, I would just tell them that I didn't want to say it. So I don't think there was a moment where I actually lied to someone, which feels good when you play a game like that. I feel
pretty rare, and usually you hear that from a lot of top board people.
Mm-hmm.
When it becomes a popularity contest. Not that Dave told lies. I don't think anyone convinced. That's not the reason why you lost. But
no.
I mean, it's a well-played alliance.
Yeah.
No, it was great. I very much enjoyed that alliance. So, thank you, Dave.
Okay. Any final words from anybody? Liam, are you still talking to me?
Oh no, I'm still here. I think honestly I was the biggest thing the two big things I was impressed with in terms of what I was able to do was still look at my 2 units, even when it was 1 unit. There are 5 enemy units next to it. There are 5, and I am still alive. I feel that maybe unintentionally let the West have so much breathing room. The fact that there were 5-6 units next to Turkey the entire game that weren't Turkish units, and it just they couldn't get rid of me. They didn't have enough trust to get rid of me at all, and I made them pay for it pretty much. So I was happy with that part, anyways.
Liam, that's the angriest I've ever seen a Canadian get.
Or
the most impassioned.
There's a few others. I mean, the Stanley Cup. There's a couple of Stanley Cup riots in the nearby city next door that were pretty big. But
Karthik, your biggest regret is not doing the rat, right? I would have given you Romania.
My biggest regret was going to Karthik and saying, look, Ed's going to make a choice between the two of us, like an 0-1, and saying, we know he's going to make a choice. Currently, we don't know what he's going to make, so why don't we make it for him?
Yeah.
And just go against him. And that maybe that would have worked, maybe it wouldn't, but that probably would have been my biggest regret.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually
it's a good argument because you can only really pick one of us at that point.
That's fair, and I'm wishy-washy with friends because you said something earlier, Liam. But if you know Village Idiot, very good player on diplomacy, he put a post on me, and he said the key to understanding my game is that I have an unhealthy need to be liked by others.
Mm-hmm.
That causes me to be indecisive when I need to be. And I remember that, and it's true. So that's a constant battle I wage with myself. Dave, Tanya, any final thoughts before we wrap up this very long podcast, which I'll probably break up into 2?
I actually, regardless of how it all turned out, I'm happy that I had a shot at the end, and I actually had a good time working with Tanya throughout the whole time. And so yeah, I got no regret. I mean, I made mistakes, but I got no regrets as far as the overall thing.
I think honestly, this game was really fun. It was actually very stressful because I think it could have swung either way. Like the winner here could have been me, or it could have been Dave. And I just, one thing happened that let it be me instead of Dave, which was great for me. but I don't think that means Dave played a bad game at all. There was so many different worlds in which he comes out on top. I make the wrong guess, John gets into Sweden, like anything, right? So I think it was a great alliance. I think that this is what you want to see on the top board. You play a good alliance, and then the person that just got the edge ends up winning, and that's fine. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about that.
Well,
it was
thanks.
fun to play with the rest of you too.
Say that last part.
I said, and it was fun to play with the rest of you as well.
I will point out, Tanya, that other than the game table, you and I were never in a room together.
He never negotiated. You're right. Yeah.
Not once. Which, I mean, there was no need to, but it wasn't even. There wasn't even the 01 pleasantries of, oh hey, we'll talk to you. I'll be your ears and you be mine kind of thing.
This is crazy because as Germany, I did not talk to Ed in spring of 1901.
Wow.
What Germany does not talk to Russia in spring of 1901?
Dude, did you see how many people? I mean, I couldn't manage my time well, which is the beginning of the podcast. I wanted to thank all four of you for coming on here and showing that diplomacy players are fun. I hope anyone who watches this can learn on how to play a top board. The biggest lesson I took away from this was my Davids versus Goliath strategy wasn't going to work, and I should have just picked France when it was wide open. We would have had a great time. Either Tanya or John would have had a great time with me.
They both would have had a great time getting rid of you.
Well, yeah, and then Morgante would have piled on me too, probably.
Yeah.
That was in my head. But look, thanks to all of you for being so honest and open. Thanks to diplomacybriefing.com for sponsoring this. And I hope all of you participate in Cascadia, even though I'm currently not signed up. I hope to be able to free my schedule to do that. And good night. Thanks so much.
Right.
Awesome. Thanks, Ed. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.